mikono iliyotushika inatuongezea thamani kwa majirani waliotuzunguka.
Naisikia rohoni ya upendo huu,
kwa sababu bendera itaendelea kupitia
kwa sababu bendera itaendelea kupepea.
Sifa zote za ustaarabu. iliyojengeka vizuri. Ndani ya Tanzania vinavyotufanya sote tujivunie wote. Ndani ya Tanzania vinavyotufanya sote tujivunie. Kuna vivutio ndani ya Tanzania vinavyotufanya sote tujivunie.
Kazana mwendo wakasema vijana njoni tulijenge kwa magomvi na jasho, hawakujali mateso, walichowaza ni kesho. Sisi watoto nchi yangu ni urithi wangu, zawadi ya pekee nitaitunza.
Nchi yangu ni urithi wangu, zawadi ya pekee nitaitunza. Nchi yangu wakasikilizana, wakasema hello hello Tanzania.
Ndugu wa damu, tusibadili mwenendo, tulinde tudumishe Tanzania.
Kwa machozi na jasho tukaze na mwendo, tuiwaze kesho ya ndugu zetu wadogo.
energy drink nipe supu ya pesa. Toka Dampa mpaka Kigoma nacheza. Mchiriku Mdumange bai Koko Muheza.
Ekechi buku dubisi ya mambege tapeneza. Mtosi keka machalari ako msewe shani weza.
Zawadi ya pekee naigeka.
Gentlemen, may we all rise to receive our dignitaries. So distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I would like to reiterate that when Madame President, President of the United Republic of Tanzania arrives, we will no longer be permitted to use our cell phones to take photos. So enjoy it while you can now. She will arrive momentarily. We have our distinguished elders with us who this delegation is led by the former president of Sierra Leone, His Excellency Ernest Bai Koroma. He's the chairman of the Africa Drive for Democracy initiative, which we are formally launching today. Ladies and gentlemen, may I invite you all to rise as we receive Her Excellency, the President of the United Republic of Tanzania. We will now take the national anthem for Tanzania. May I invite you to remain standing as we now take the African Union anthem. Thank you. Please be seated. Your Excellency, Dr. SAMIA Suluhu Hassan, President of the United Republic of Tanzania. Your Excellency, Ernest Bai Koroma, former President of the Republic of Sierra Leone and the Chairman of the Africa Drive for Democracy Initiative. Your Excellency, Jakaya Kikwete, former President of the United Republic of Tanzania. Your Excellency, Hailemariam Desalegn, the former Prime Minister of Ethiopia, we thank you for gracing us with your presence this morning as we formally launch the Drive for Democracy in Africa. We have a very important program ahead of us today, and we acknowledge the fact that this event is taking place in a very remarkable city, district, and region. So to provide us with introductory remarks and a proper welcome, I would like to invite the Regional Commissioner for Arusha, Honorable John Mongella. Could you help me welcome him with a round of applause?
Your Excellency, Dr. SAMIA Suluhu Hassan, President of the United Republic of Tanzania. Your Excellency, Ernest Bai Koroma, former President of the Republic of Sierra Leone and Chair of the Africa Drive for Democracy Initiative. Your Excellency, Dr. Jakaya Mrisho Kikwete, former President of the United Republic of Tanzania. Your Excellency, Hailemariam Desalegn, former Prime Minister of the Federal Democratic Republic of Ethiopia. Your Excellency, Salah Hamad, Head of the African Governance Architecture Secretariat at the African Union. Advocate Batloko Makon, Chief of Staff of the African Peer Review Mechanism. Madam Makena Mobobia, Executive Director of the MS Training Center for Development Cooperation. Dr. Fonte Akum, Executive Director of the Institute for Security Studies. Mr. Deus Valentine Remamu, Chief Executive Officer of the Center for Strategic Litigation. Distinguished guests, members of the media fraternity, and luminaries from all over the continent. I take this opportunity to invite you all to this beautiful city of Arusha. I'm sure every one of us is enjoying the weather. Your Excellencies, it is an honor for us in Arusha to be hosting such an important meeting about the state of democracy in our continent. I understand that the Africa Drive for Democracy seeks to create the space for active dialogue among democracy practitioners in the continent who have taken the decision to take ownership of Africa's destiny and not just be bystanders in the face of multiple crises facing our region. Your Excellencies, Arusha hosted many important forums and meetings about the destiny of our continent and region, peace talks that have led to democratic rule and stability throughout the region. Arusha hosts the city of justice for the continent in the shape of the African Court on Human and People's Rights, and also the East African High Court of Justice, which we are privileged to have the President of the Court amongst us. It is for this reason, I believe the organizers of this important event chose our city as the host of these important conversations. I wish, therefore, to note only that organizers had chosen the seat of Arusha, but also welcome you all to our city. And we suggest that if Your Excellencies, in one of your resolutions, to declare that Arusha become the permanent host for these sessions. Your Excellencies, while understanding the status of your busy schedules, it is recommended that if only you can spare some time to visit some tourist attractions close by, like the Ngorongoro Crater, Tarangire National Park, Serengeti National Park, or a flight to the Spice Islands of Zanzibar. Your Excellencies, dear delegates, with these remarks, I thank you all for your kind attention. Karibuni sana Arusha.
Your Excellencies and distinguished ladies and gentlemen, before we continue, we'd like to acknowledge the presence of some of our special guests in the room. First of all, we'd like to acknowledge the presence of the CCM chairman. Can we clap and acknowledge? We will also acknowledge the presence of the president of the East Africa Court of Justice, the regional and district security committee members present. We acknowledge you. We acknowledge the presence of all district commissioners in the House. We acknowledge all of the members of the regional secretariat that are present. We also want to acknowledge the district administrative secretaries who are here. All heads of public institutions that are here, we'd like to acknowledge you now. The city director and district executive directors, we'd like to acknowledge your presence and thank you for coming. All religious leaders present, we acknowledge your presence. All journalists and pressmen and women, we acknowledge your presence in the back and we appreciate. And all citizens of this great nation, we thank you for your presence here today. As we continue with our program, I would like to invite a representative from the organizing team. This has been a really enormous effort, a collaboration between 3 distinct organizations, and I would like to invite the executive director of one of these organizations to provide brief remarks. If you could help me welcome Mr. Deus Valentine to the stage.
Your Excellency, Dr. SAMIA Suluhu Hassan, President of the United Republic of Tanzania, Your Excellency Ernest Pai Koroma, former President of the Republic of Sierra Leone, Your Excellency and Chair of the Africa Drive for Democracy Initiative, Your Excellency Jakaya Mrisho Kikwete, the Resident Elder and former President of the United Republic of Tanzania, Your Excellency Haile Mariam Desalegn Boshe, former Prime Minister of Ethiopia. Allow me, before I proceed, to invite my colleagues who were meant to also offer remarks but have appointed me to speak on my behalf, to speak on their behalf, to accompany me as I offer my remarks, because that is the promise they made and that is how I accepted it. Your Excellency, Dr. SAMIA Suluhu Hassan, we are indeed grateful for your grace and your generosity, because when initially approached your office, we were informed of the visit of a head of state who was meant to arrive, I believe is still arriving today, And despite your busy schedule, you decided to take some time off and join us at this very important conversation. Asante sana. I wish to also thank you, Your Excellency, for all the support we've received from your entire government. We were received very well when we went to the Ministry for Foreign Affairs, the protocol office. I would like to request, when you're doing your bonus calculations during the end of the year, not to forget them. But even more so, the regional commissioner, led by the regional secretary, led by my brother, John Mongela. They've been extremely, extremely helpful, because as you can imagine, to bring in delegates from 45 different African countries, half of them requiring referral visas, is not an easy task. So we really appreciate the support we've received from your government. And I believe the argument he's made for Arusha to become a permanent seat, he's doing a good job at that already. And we hope that we can contribute to seeing this meeting grow over the years. We understand your government's intention to see the numbers, the tourist numbers, grow to 2.5 million. Our vision would be for us to contribute at least 2,000 of those tourists through this meeting. Kwa hiyo, Mheshimiwa Rais, it's about how we sit together and plan this sales plan together. We appreciate the support of your government, Madam President. Madam President, I wish to very briefly explain why we are here, and also give us an overview of the Africa Drive for Democracy initiative. As I mentioned during the briefing, we met for the first time last year. But what had pushed us to meet in the first place was the crisis we were observing across the continent. A lot of it was fueled by the COVID-19 outbreak, where we noticed on the continent 21 coups registered in a space of 3 years. And we got really worried about where our continent was headed. It kind of feels like we've gone back to the 1970s, where you're never really sure who's the president of anywhere, because when you go to the summit, there's a different person. So out of that concern, we decided, those of us who are non-state actors, not necessarily leaders of government, to come together, bring our minds together, try and envision a different Africa where, as citizens, we're playing an active role in shaping the destiny of our continent. So again, we are grateful that we were received very well when we met for the first time last year, and we are grateful to President Ernest Bai Koroma, who graciously accepted our invitation last year to join us as the guest of honor, and not only that, but to commit for the next 3 years to be the chair of this initiative. And we're working very closely with his office to mobilize, as I mentioned to you earlier, the other elders on this continent to talk about the state of democracy on the continent, because it is indeed our belief that the problems of Africa should not necessarily be discussed in Jeddah or Washington or Brussels when there's elders in this village. We hope, Your Excellency, that it will become your ambition as well to one day, inshallah, join this WhatsApp group of elders once you have left your term in office. The elders we have invited were not randomly selected. Each one of them has a reason to be part of this club. The most important litmus test was the manner with which they stayed and left power. Because we believe for Africa to have a candid conversation about democratic norms, it is important that the messenger themselves have the credibility. So you'll see President Kikwete in 2015, there was a lot of rumor. You had just left the Constituent Assembly, and people were shouting, but President Kikwete hasn't finished the Constitution review process. We should extend it by at least 3 years so that he stays on. But he refused that, right? President Amani Karume from Zanzibar, who was meant to be with us today, unfortunately because of conflicting schedule, he couldn't join us. You remember in Zanzibar, he had just passed the new constitution, and many, including those in the opposition, kept shouting that, you just passed the new constitution, you haven't even tested it. You should stay on, after you're done, that's when you go. So for us, that's an important criteria, because we want to spread this message that Africa can be democratic, and Africa can generate its own formula for democratization. We do not need a template imported into this continent and be taught how to become democratic. And we believe that the messengers we are trying to bring together will help us shape that message, give credence to it. And as mentioned to you, Madam President, we are in the company of many others. Those who are here physically only represent a small representation of the rest of them. President Joaquim Chissano will arrive this afternoon. Unfortunately, he had engagements in Zimbabwe. As you know, he's involved with the negotiations there, but has still offered, despite his busy schedule, to join us later this afternoon. Madam Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma had meant to be here. Unfortunately, because of the BRICS Youth Summit, she had to stay behind because she's the minister in the presidency responsible for that. Madam Graça Machel was unable to make it because she's in Kigali for the Women Deliver Conference. Madam Amina Garib Fakim, former president of Mauritius, has a conflicting schedule, so she couldn't join us. So couldn't President Goodluck Jonathan. President Thomas Boniai from Benin was meant to travel. Unfortunately, the flight itinerary was too hard on him. So he had to avoid the travel because otherwise, by the time he got here, we would have had to organize for ambulances. So we had to allow him to stay on and join us virtually so that at least, you know, we need him alive. So there are many others beyond those you see here in the room, Madam President. Our vision is to not just turn this into another talk shop. We know that there are many fora on the continent. And one of the conversations we will have with these elders in the next 2 days is about these other forums. As you know, at the AU level, we've got the panel of the wise. At the SADC level, there's an elders forum. In West Africa, President Jonathan is leading another elders forum. So one of the conversations we really want to have is how do we make this particular forum effective and efficient? How does this forum contribute to the continent's efforts to bring about peace, stability, democratic governance, inclusive governance? So we are hoping that tapping into the existing networks, their own platforms, because each of them has already an existing platform, we will then be able to pass on that message. But we hope, therefore, also that through this platform, they will engage with the continental leadership. As you rightly acknowledged earlier, there's a lot that the current leadership could learn from those who've come before you. And therefore, what we're trying to do is to engage the elders with evidence, show them what the evidence shows of what is going on the continent, and inviting them to share their wisdom, their reflections, so that informs the continental agenda on democratization. Madam President, this meeting, or rather convening, will proceed later in the week into a People's Assembly, where the practitioners, as rightly acknowledged by the Regional Commissioner, will gather for a more informal setup, where we talk based on our own experiences, the data we are putting together, the experiences challenging the different democratic violations we see on the continent, to develop a common agenda and to build a Pan-African movement in support of democracy. Madam President, we could not have put this meeting together without the support, as you can imagine, of so many partners. While there are 3 of us host institutions, the Center for Strategic Litigation, which I represent, and as I mentioned, we're based in Zanzibar with an office in Cape Town. I have with me my colleagues from the MS Training Center for Development Cooperation, based in Usariva, Tanzania, and my colleague, Dr. Fonte Akum, from the Institute for Security Studies, based in Pretoria. But there are many others who've come together in this effort, and I wish to acknowledge them with your permission, Madam President. Afrobarometer, the CEO of Afrobarometer is here with us, Joseph Asunka. We are also joined in this effort by a leading African feminist institution, Akina Mama wa Afrika. The executive director, Eunice Musime, is here with us. We're also joined in this effort with the International Commission for Jurists, ICJ. The Africa director is here with us, and I wish to acknowledge her presence. We've also been able to pull this together with the support of several of our generous donors. Some of them are here present. I might miss any of them, so if you're here, I would like to just acknowledge your presence. It has taken a village, as they like to say, and many of us have really had to come together to allow us to succeed in this effort. Madam President, it is indeed, as I mentioned earlier, our intention to carry on this conversation in the long run. We don't want to just end with talking about the state of democracy on the continent. In the next 2 days, our elders will hear from experts in the field of democracy generally, but then there will also be sessions on the state of women political participation. There will also be a session on the state of the rule of law on the continent. There will also be a session on the state of peace and security. We expect that their conversation will lead us into a joint message of what they believe can be done on the continent, and later on that will be developed into a position paper and a 3-year program of action, which we hope Your Excellency, you will collaborate with us in enforcing this program of action. So we look forward, indeed, based on the experience we've had over the last 2 years, to continue collaborating with your government, Your Excellency. Allow me at this stage to also acknowledge members of the various staff of our 3 institutions, who I can assure you, Madam President, have been working day and night for the last 5 weeks or so. We have learned many lessons in the course of organizing this event about protocol, about how to behave around elders, about how to receive presidents, and we've come out of this experience better people. So allow me to acknowledge the presence of members of staff of the Center for Strategic Litigation, the MS Training Center. Please stand up for acknowledgement. And members of the Institute for Security Studies, all of whom have collectively made the effort to pull this meeting together. It is indeed our hope and prayer, Madam President, that through this forum we are creating on the continent a model that many other leaders will be inspired towards. We hope that the messages our elders will help us transmit to the continent will go a long way in inspiring a new brand of leadership, and hope on the continent that we can have in Africa a democratic society governed with inclusion and respect for the rule of law. That said, Madam President, I wish to stop there to thank you once again for joining us. God bless you, and God bless Africa.
Thank you very much, Deus and McKenna and Fonte, for all your hard work. We know that democracy does not come to us from the heavens. It is people and leaders who make it. And one of the foremost leaders for this is His Excellency Ernest Bai Corona, who serves the chair of this initiative. It's my pleasure to welcome you to address the group. Please, sir.
Thank you very much for inviting me to the podium. Her Excellency Dr. SAMIA Suluhu Hassan, President of the United Republic of Tanzania, His Excellency Jakaya Kikwete, former President of the United Republic of Tanzania, His Excellency Helia Mariam Desalegn Bushi, former Prime Minister of Ethiopia, our host, the Honorable John Mongela, Regional Commissioner for Arusha, officials of the region, fellow advocates for democracy, human rights, and the rule of law, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. I feel truly honored, and it is truly humbling to be in this company of distinguished champions of democracy and aspiring African leaders. Your work, your vision, Your commitment to the cause of democracy, good governance, and the rule of law provide so much comfort and optimism for a more peaceful, united, well-governed, and prosperous Africa. As we embark on this historic Africa Drive for Democracy Elders Retreat, therefore, I would like to extend my deepest appreciation to our dear sister, Her Excellency President Dr. SAMIA Suluhu Hassan, the government, and the people of Tanzania for the warm and typical African hospitality with which we have been welcomed in this strikingly beautiful sister republic. Madam President, we are very pleased that you made time out of your very busy schedule to come all the way here to be with us in this famous Arusha of natural attractions and home of the famous Mount Kilimanjaro. Thank you very much, Madam President. We cannot thank enough our esteemed statesmen, my dear brothers, for dropping everything else, not just to join us, but more importantly, to enrich and guide our conversation and approaches. Please, a round of applause for our elders. I strongly believe that there is a lot we are going to gain from their rich and inspiring experiences. Madam President, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I would like to extend profound thanks to the organizers, the Center for Strategic Litigation, the Institute for Security Studies, and the MS Training Center for Development Cooperation for providing this platform for us to constructively engage and inspire each other as we, in our diverse ways, work assiduously to improve democratic good governance in Africa, which lies in the heart of our shared aspirations. But I am not surprised at all. We all share the reality that there is so much going on in Africa that leaves our people with more questions than answers. Developments such as the recent war in Sudan, the persisting conflicts in Somalia, Nigeria, Mali, Burkina Faso, the Democratic Republic of Congo, Central Africa Republic, and others. The spread of violent extremism, the increasing poverty, and economic hardship have left societies and families devastated and buried in the ashes of pain and abandonment. In the heart of these developments is the rapid decline of democracy, manifested through state capture of democratic institutions, legislatures, judiciaries, which are supposed to check the excesses of the executive, are in many cases leading the charge in bridging constitutions to favor undemocratic practices such as entrenching leaders against the wishes of their people, or use pandemics to their advantage to suppress opposition and dissenting voices. We all witness the electoral management bodies doing the bidding for the incumbents. We witnessed the state security forces suppressing the people they are supposed to protect, including opposition leaders and their supporters. As a direct impact of this, we are experiencing a growing contention between the state and its youths, civil society, and the media, all of whom are increasingly being muzzled. This has, in some instances, paved the way to the re-emergence of military governments in several countries in the continent. But as an anonymous writer noted, and I quote, "Democracy is a slow process of stumbling into the right decision instead of going straight forward to the wrong one," end of quote. The good news is that the AU and the regional bodies are far advanced in reviewing their democracy, good governance, and security protocols, which are aimed at effectively responding to the ongoing ills afflicting Africa's democracy. It could be helpful, however, for those reviews to be expeditiously concluded and rolled out so that Africans could see that something is being done to halt the democratic decline and restore our beloved continent on the desired path of good governance, peace, and development. Achieving this requires like minds and strong commitment and collaboration. This is why I will acknowledge the West African Elders Forum under the auspices of the Good Luck Foundation for its noble efforts in mediating political transitions, conflict, and promoting democracy. The Brentos Foundation, based in South Africa, has also been paying particular attention to the nexus between bad governance, insecurity, and poverty. We are all in this together because we believe in the transformative power of democracy, because we believe that democracy is not just a system of governance, it is a vehicle of hope, progress, and social cohesion. It empowers individuals and communities alike, and it gives them a voice and agency in shaping their own destinies. No doubt, democracy is not without obstacles, but together we must confront the challenges that threaten its foundations: poor leadership, ineffective citizenship, poverty, corruption, political polarization, rogue elections, and all their attendant ramifications of social unrest and political instability. It is our collective responsibility as leaders and advocates to tackle these issues head-on and work tirelessly to build resilient democracies that leave no one behind. There are many ways this could be done. This retreat provides a credible and potent platform to explore solutions, harness our influences, and pave the way for a future where democracy thrives across the African continent. As we embark on this journey, let us remember the millions of Africans whose faith in democracy is weakening. Let us remember the millions of fellow Africans who, owing to bad governance, are being pushed away into the hazards of the Mediterranean seas and the hostilities of irregular migration. Let us keep in our thoughts citizens who are routinely forced from their homes, whose livelihoods are destroyed, who are unlawfully incarcerated, wounded, and killed by those who are supposed to be the ones to protect them. I am confident that the Africa Drive for Democracy Elders Retreat will lay the groundwork for a legacy of democratic values that will resonate with the aspirations of these and future generations. As it is said, let people think they govern and they will be governed. Thank you once again for your warm welcome, and I look forward to the engaging discussions that lie ahead. Together, we can forge a path towards a more democratic, inclusive, and prosperous Africa. Asante sana.
Thank you very much, President Koroma, for those thoughtful and candid remarks. One of the challenges we have across our continent is when some leaders believe that they are indispensable, that without them, that country will not manage to stay and stay on for years and years and years. So it is quite unusual when a leader decides that sometimes it may be time for the good of the country and good of the people to step down, perhaps even before his time. That is a true courageous act of leadership. It is my great pleasure now to welcome His Excellency Haile Mariam Desalegn, who stepped down earlier than his term because he understood that to be what the country needed at that point. Your Excellency, please welcome.
Thank you very much, Moderator. Your Excellency, President Dr. SAMIA Suluhu Hassan, Your Excellencies, my fellow former presidents present here today, Your Excellency, the Commissioner of Arusha, distinguished scholars, practitioners, representatives of all sections of society, dear participants, sisters and brothers, ladies and gentlemen. A very warm greetings to our guest of honor, President SAMIA, and I'm always inspired to be in a program with our only executive women president in our continent. And Madam President, thank you so much for hosting us in this beautiful Arusha with very hospitable and generous people of Tanzania. What an honor and an inspiration to be here today with you, my fellow Africans, to deliberate on a very critical topic. Thank you so much, my President, President Koroma, for inviting me. I have come to know a trinity of organizers: Center for Strategic Litigation, Institute for Security Studies, and MS Training Center for Development Cooperation. Let us give a big round of applause for the excellent organization of this one, so that they keep it up for the future, of course, in Arusha. Your Excellencies, distinguished participants, we all know the true and lasting peace and accelerated development in our nations and amongst African nations cannot be achieved by amassing to possess a huge sum of armaments, which are supplied in a big and sufficient amount, but only by trust building in our society, by building a democratic and developmental state. I intend not to speak statements and lecture you, but will try to ask some basic questions which I feel should be raised during this kind of high-level deliberations, and some of them are as follows. We could see the recent events. 1 year down the line, the pandemic has been exposed, the fault lines in the democratic values, and the continent, and big rooms for citizens to express their frustrations, as seen in the citizens' mobilization and protest from Algeria to Guinea, Mali, Nigeria, Tunisia, and Sudan. But why are these movements didn't result in a proper democratic transitions? This is a big question. Why those kind of pseudo-democratic transitions, for example, are seen in Zimbabwe, Sudan, and Algeria, which in the beginning kindled some hope, but ended up to the contrary? Why attempts to erode presidential term limits are at increase? Continued erosion of freedom of expression and acts to information through media clampdowns and internet shutdowns, even though social media has the potential to incitement and provocation where the local justice system could not handle it. Examples like fake news, hate speeches, disinformation and misinformations, and online bullying that rose to concerning levels. Do citizens demonstrate strong democratic aspirations in our continent? Are they resilient and persistent to continuously mobilize themselves to demand democratic discourse and democratic change and hold their leaders accountable? What are the strengths and weaknesses of this activism and mobilizations? We have to deliberate on these things. Do we see a clear resilience of democratic institutions like our electoral commissions, judiciary, in addition to citizens' activism and aspirations for democratic transitions? We have seen this in Kenya, in Zambia. I think the President Koroma is a living witness, where presidents at the end were not willing to leave office. The Gambia, in Liberia, in Malawi, in Seychelles, to mention some. Are there any attempts by executives to compromise the independence of these institutions? Does our demographic structure have any role to play? Say, for example, the power of African youthful population. Is it channeled as an opportunity to build political space for democratic process and change? Or is it a serious challenge, sometimes even becomes an emergency, for actually there is an extraordinary growing trend of unemployment and underemployment that cannot easily be addressed by our leaders? Social inequality and hopelessness could provide fertile grounds for recruitment for violent extremist groups, human and illicit financial trafficking rings, and perpetrators of political violence. What is the impact of ethnically based political mobilization and polarization in our continent? I thank Tanzania for this because you handled it properly. I think this mobilization of politics in our continent on the democratization drive in Africa can we have uniquely African democratic values entrenched in African values and African traditions and cultures for democracy? What do we mean by that? Do we have the political will and political action to meet our commitments to gender equality? Where are we on women's political participation and ownership? Do we have hope for democracy to prevail in our continent? What's the level of democratic aspirations and activism and the resilience of our democratic institutions? Do we have sufficient platforms that can stimulate intergenerational dialogue that helps to exchange experiences and best practices, or this time on democratic practices, or we leaders are much more far away from our citizens, and our elders are all not interested in intergenerational dialogue? Last but not least, is it possible to practice a Western democracy model in a society where most of us Africans are agrarian, pastoralists, and semi-pastoralists, and of course, most of us are subsistence producers and low-income categories? Is there anything like our own terms in democracy on African value systems? Your Excellency, Madam President, and dear colleagues, let me leave you with these questions, which I haven't got a proper answer myself to deliberate on them, and therefore ready to learn from you in earnest. May this great continent, Africa, overcome with dignity and grace this challenging time of democratic deficit and chart a new era yet to come where African democracy prevails and flourishes. Thank you for your kind attention, and God bless you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Prime Minister. Our next leader needs no introduction to most of you in the room. You have seen him in action. He has been with virtually all the important leaders of this world. I have seen him with the President of the United States, several presidents of the United States, for example, and it is amazing to see the clear leadership that shines through in representing Tanzania and Africa with them. But perhaps the thing that I remember the most about him is, despite him being at the height of power, that at core he remains a human being, and he understands that democracy is about the people, about the Wananchi. With that, I would like to welcome you, Your Excellency, Jakaya Mrisho Kikwete. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rakesh. Huyu Rakesh, rais ndio aliyekuwa na ile tuwaweza ile. Ndio huyu alikuwa anatuponda sana. Lakini tulivumiliana wakati ule. Kuna wakati usingeweza yale. Your Excellency Dr. SAMIA Suluhu Hassan, President of the United Republic of Tanzania, Your Excellency Ernest Bai Koroma, former President of the Republic of Sierra Leone, and Chair of the Africa Drive for Democracy, Your Excellency Haile Mariam Desalegn, former Prime Minister of the Federal Democratic Republic of Ethiopia, conveners of this forum,
distinguished invited guests, ladies and gentlemen. My task today is simple: to welcome Your Excellency, Madam President, to speak and grace this retreat of former leaders, former African leaders who some call elders. But before I do so, please permit me to join my two fellow former leaders who spoke before me to thank you most sincerely for accepting the invitation and for allocating time out of your very busy schedule to come in person to grace this meeting. It means a lot to about a dozen of us who are part of this initiative. It demonstrates the importance that you personally and your esteemed government attach not only to the ideals of this retreat, but also to the discourse on democracy and development in Africa. Your Excellency, the relevance of this retreat of former leaders cannot be overstated. It is timely, and it is needed in view of the multiple crises facing the African continent. As mentioned earlier by previous speakers, political conflicts, wars, climate change, the COVID-19 pandemic, the high energy and food prices, the ongoing Russia-Ukraine war, and several others have been impacting negatively on growth and development in our dear continent. These challenges have been compounding the already fragile situation in many countries in Africa. The confluence of these crises has exposed Africa's economic and governance frailties and underscores the need and importance of collectively exploring homegrown solutions to African problems. As a former leader myself, I can rightly testify that sitting African leaders have a pivotal role to play in addressing these challenges. It is their primary responsibility, but I believe also that former leaders can play a role in this regard. They are well connected with both the past and the present and can contextualize existing challenges and share their reflections of past experiences with existing readers. At this juncture, I would like to take this opportunity to commend my fellow former leaders, His Excellency Ernest Bai Koroma, the former president of Sierra Leone, and for being the flag bearer of this wonderful initiative. President, we thank you. Also, His Excellency Haile Mariam, former Prime Minister of the Federal Democratic Republic of Ethiopia, who is participating, like me, for the first time. As already mentioned, His Excellency Joachim Chissano, former President of the Republic of Mozambique, will join us later. Maybe he's on his way from the airport. But I thank them for agreeing to join this important conversation in person. But I thank the chair, President Koroma. We have been whispering. I've been trying to, well, why are you laughing? You know, I've been trying to make him agree that Arusha becomes the seat of this initiative. And he has generously accepted. So, Prime Minister, If the chairman have said yes, can you say no?
I already said it.
Then it's done. In the same vein, I commend the other 9 leaders who have joined this initiative. They were supposed to be with us, but could not for various reasons. Some are joining us virtually, enabled and facilitated by modern advances in information and communications technology. I'm told President Ellen Johnson Sirleaf was ready to address this meeting here, but this room is not made for that, unfortunately. But she will talk to us, President, after we leave this room at another facility. Your Excellency, President, as it has been stated already that this retreat of former leaders and distinguished participants will share their thoughts, wisdom, and experiences on the broader areas of governance and development, but accord specific attention on the intriguing subject of the state of democracy in Africa. I'm of the view that for one to fully appreciate the current situation in Africa, it is worthwhile to reflect on the challenges we have been grappling with in the political, economic, and development arena from a historical perspective. Most of the challenges we are facing, our countries today, are a continuum of what has been happening in the past. Since independence in the 1960s, successive governments of African countries have been preoccupied with the overarching task of nation building, which involved matters relating to holding the country together. As you know, President and all the distinguished participants, Africa is the only country that the borders are arbitrary. No continent in the world has borders like ours, like ours. They are straight line, which means the borders are not natural. It appears that somebody was holding a rope on one side and the other on this end, drawing a line. The right is mine, the left is yours. And in the process, they've created nations that have a lot of difficulties. They've created conflicts within nations and conflicts between nations. So holding together such countries is a mammoth task. The other is establishing systems of government and governance, building an equitable and inclusive society, promoting inclusive social economic growth and development, and fighting vices in society. Interestingly, these have remained priority and important areas of preoccupation for our leaders and their nations up to this day, despite progress made over the past 6 decades. Indeed, a lot of ground has been covered and significant progress has been made over the past 60 years since independence. However, the levels of progress made differ from country to country and between our continent of Africa and other continents. At this retreat, we will look at the state of play on democracy in Africa and other aspects of nation building, of the nation building agenda. We are doing this
for purposes of advising on pathways forward to greater progress. Your Excellency President, my fellow former leaders, ladies and gentlemen, each country has a different story to tell as far as the nation building project is concerned. But I can dare say with confidence that we in Tanzania have somewhat been lucky. In many ways, it is thanks to the vision and efforts of our founding fathers, Mwalimu Julius Nyerere, the first president of the Republic of Tanganyika, and later the first president of the United Republic of Tanzania, and Sheikh Abeid Aman Karume, the first president of the People's Republic of Zanzibar, and later the vice president of the United Republic of Tanzania. They laid a firm and strong foundation upon which successive generations of leaders, me included, have continued to advance the nation-building project in our country. Now we are proud. We are a proud nation of 61 million people, made up of 126 tribes, subscribing to different faith, members of different political parties. I think we have 24 political parties, very democratic. Prime Minister, how many do you have in Ethiopia? 58. 58? You have beaten us. But we are at peace with ourselves. In many aspects of the human development indicators, we are better off today than we were at independence or even 20 or 10 years ago. However, there are still many challenges that we need to continue to be working on to consummate the goal of a united, stable, democratic, and prosperous Tanzania. It is heartwarming to note that Your Excellency President Dr. SAMIA Suluhu Hassan and your esteemed government have steadily stayed the course. You are not only sustaining the gains made so far, but you are steadfast and committed to advancing the country to greater heights. Congratulations, Your Excellency. And please continue to do the good work. And just like your motto, kazi iendelee. Unfortunately, some African countries have not been so lucky in the nation-building agenda. Most of the conflicts we are witnessing today in our continent can be attributed in one way or another to the failures in the nation-building agenda. It is no surprise that when one looks at many development, democracy, and governance indicators of many institutions, many African countries will be at the bottom half of the list, or at the bottom half of the pecking order. And our motherland, the African continent, collectively will be the least performer. This situation is not acceptable. It has to change. We must hasten the pace of change. We should do everything within our power to do that. Yes, we can. Your Excellency, ladies and gentlemen, as we endeavor to address these common challenges facing our continent, it is important for us as former and current leaders to continue to interrogate, analyze, and express from the African perspectives a way that suits us as Africans. This is precisely
what this auspicious gathering sets out to do. I'm hopeful that the debate and deliberations that will ensue in the course of the 2 days will add to the mantra of Africans coming together to forge African solutions to African problems. I beseech my fellow former leaders and I to leverage our experience so that we can embark together on a journey that seeks to realize a prosperous future for Africa, where our continent is integrated, prosperous, democratic, and peaceful. A continent that is driven by its own citizens, representing a dynamic force on the international arena, as is stipulated in OAU's Agenda 2063. Your Excellency, I once again thank you for joining us. And after these many words, it is now my singular honor and pleasure to invite Your Excellency to the podium to deliver your keynote address. We are all ears. Thank you. Karibu sana Mheshimiwa Rais.
Please be seated. Thank you. Your Excellency, Ernest Bai Koroma, former President of the Republic of Sierra Leone and Chair of the African Drive for Democracy Initiative, Your Excellency Dr. Jakaya Mrisho Kikwete, former President of the United Republic of Tanzania, Your Excellency Haile Mariam Desalegn, former Prime Minister of the Federal Republic of Ethiopia, representative from the African Court on Human and People's Rights, all dignitaries who are joining us virtually, Your Excellency Honorable John Mongela, Regional Commissioner for Arusha Region. I also acknowledge the presence of the Regional Peace and Security Committee and the district commissioners here present. Advocate Batlokoa, you will excuse me mentioning the West African names, so difficult. Advocate Batlokoa Makong, Chief of Staff of the African Peer Review Mechanism. If he may stand, I thank you. Thank you. Madam Makena Mobobia, Executive Director of the MS Training Center for Development Cooperation. Dr. Fonte Akum, Executive Director, the Institute for Security Studies. Thank you. Mr. Jus Valentin Ruemamu, you can imagine the way I pronounce it, Ruemamu, just like that, because it's Tanzanian. And it's difficult, but I manage, Ruemamu. Chief Executive Officer of the Center for Strategic Litigation. I recognize the presence of my brother, Bishop Bagonza, and of course, Mr. General Ulimwengu, who just vacated the room, members of my delegation, distinguished guests, members of media fraternity, and luminaries from all over the continent. A very good morning to you all, my elders, brothers, and sisters. It is with immense honor and pleasure that I join you this morning to officiate the 2023 Elders Retreat on the state of democracy in Africa. When I received this request to be the guest of honor, I told my assistants that regardless of my tight schedule, they must make sure, they must have time for me to be amongst you here today. Now, being new in this game of leadership, I thought I have to meet the gurus, the Koromas, Kikwetes, and the Haile Mariams, the gurus of the constituency, and learn from them on whether my ship is sailing in the right direction or not, given the sustained and alarming challenges of democracy in many of our African countries. Excellencies, I congratulate the organizers of the retreat for the wonderful choice of the venue. I'm happy that the retreat is taking place for the second time in this great touristic city of Arusha, the home of great Serengeti, Ngorongoro, Mount Meru, and the East African community, and hopefully the home of this platform. It's going to be here in Arusha. On a special note, I commend His Excellency Ernest Bai Koroma for the leadership of the African Drive for Democracy initiative, and I wish you, Your Excellency, the best in pursuing the objectives of the initiative. It is through this platform that the wealth of wisdom to inform on democratization agenda on the continent can be harvested. And more importantly, is that the seed you, our elders, are planting through this initiative will germinate into a much-needed fountain of wisdom and guidance in support of our collective continental ambitions for an integrated, prosperous, and peaceful Africa, driven by its own citizens, representing a dynamic force in the international arena. The Africa we want, as stipulated in the Vision 2063. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the convening of this elders' retreat on the state of democracy in Africa could not be more timely, given the fact that the democratic gains that were made in the past are regressing. Even in democracies that once flourished, we are witnessing the regression. Some statistics note that Africa's 54 states, 25 have experienced coups, attempted coups, or disruptions to constitutional order since 2010. In addition, it is said to note that according to the International Center for Investigation or Investigative Reporting, the continent has not been safe. And in the past 80 years, there have been 21 coups, with emergence of new conflict in Sudan, unresolved crisis in West Africa, the Sahel, and discontent in Eastern DRC, which have all led to declining democracy and stalling of governance. And those who spoke earlier have said some other examples. This situation has been further exacerbated by the COVID-19 pandemic, which had negative effects to the economy and to some extent led to imposed restrictions and elections postponement in some countries. Some of these regressing factors or challenges are not our own making. The geopolitical conflicts, pandemics, and climate change have struck a huge blow to the continent in terms of surging food prices, shrinking economic growth, and deceleration in the implementation of the global development aspirations as stipulated in the Agenda 2030 for Sustainable Development and on the implementation of Agenda 2063, the Africa we want. Democracy entails governing in accordance with the will of the people, or as the late President Abraham Lincoln suggested, it is a government of the people, by the people, for the people. The people are the central focus and indeed are the architects and ultimate beneficiaries of an inclusive democracy system or democratic system of governance. The currently descending economic trends with heavy debt burden to most of the governments in the continent, resulting in failing to deliver basic services, failing to protect the rights of the most vulnerable, and not be able to address historical injustice, including chronic economic inequality, and thus putting to test the very idea of democracy in our continent. Failure by governments to deliver essential public goods has eroded the grievances and turmoil in some parts of the continent. Some neglect has also prompted some members of the society to challenge and undermine government authorities by establishing systems that violently express the will of the people. And this is the wanaharakatis, the terror groups, the mandamanos, all these have cropped out of non-delivery of basic social services. And this is where some aspects of democracy, such as freedom of association and freedom of expression, are negatively used. Now, unless and until African governments address the deficiencies in democratic governance and deliver essential public services to their people, democracy will remain an aspiration never to be meaningfully realized. And let me be very clear here that I don't see an alternative to democracy as a prerequisite to achieve sustainable development and strong economic growth for our countries. For democracy is closely associated with peace, social stability, and rapid socio-economic development. Excellencies and dear participants, those of us who believe in democracy as the most appropriate form of governance must proactively engage with our people towards shared ambition for an Africa with an entrenched, and flourishing culture of human rights, democracy, gender equality, inclusion, and peace. And a continent where prosperity, security, and safety for all citizens will be a norm of life. We must build confident society that will enable participate in the management of public affairs as stipulated under Article 13 of the African Charter and democracy, elections, and governance. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, for democracy to be meaningful, it needs to translate into improved public services and livelihoods of our people. Democracy should be a best proven means of enabling our people to mobilize, organize, and engage in the governance of their public life. And henceforth, in cognizant of the virtue of democracy, and in responding to the call by former President Dr. Kikwete on sustaining the hard-won gains on democracy in Tanzania, and in commemorating 30 years of the reintroduction of multi-party political system in our country, I launched our agenda for strengthening and consolidating democracy in the country. The first R stands for reconciliation, mainly among political parties, but also other groups in our society. This agenda recognizes the value of reconciliation in strengthening national cohesion. Through dialogue and mutual accommodation, we have managed to resolve some of our differences. We have strengthened our unity, and we are now forging ahead as a unified nation and working towards a more peaceful and prosperous Tanzania. We might be having our differences, but then not to the extent of distorting the peace of our nation. The second R stands for reforms. And having realized the shortfalls, Tanzanian government decided to review and improve several policies and legal frameworks, which restricted the participation of our citizens in the democratic processes. Some of the steps taken are removal of the ban of holding political rallies, also review of several legislations with a view to strengthen democratic institutions and processes. Furthermore, in the quest to strengthen democracy and rule of law, the President Commission on Criminal Justice Reforms was formed to look into the performance of our justice institutions so as to effect reforms for better performance. And we have already received the report, which is now under discussion. The third R is on resilience. Tanzania is a nation with strong political institutions that have withheld the taste of time. We are building a vibrant economy with an emphasis on increasing competitiveness and achieving industrialization for human development. Our goal is to build a resilient economy that adequately withstand shocks, including financial crisis, pandemics, and other natural calamities such as the effect of climate change. The fourth R is on rebuilding. My government is determined to steer Tanzania into prosperity. This ambition requires us to build our country with a focus on young people who make up the majority of the population. In this regard, the government is investing in human capital development through the provision of lifelong learning, skills, and job creation. We are also redoubling on investment in agriculture, infrastructure, tourism, mining, and the blue economy as sectors who might take a lot of youth in their employment. Now, in underpinning the objective of this agenda is our determination to the observance of fiscal discipline, reorganization of expenditure patterns, careful planning, and building a dedicated workforce. Dear brothers and sisters, for us who inherited post-independence Africa and enjoyed the fruits of freedom and orderly leadership, shall commit grave mistakes if we leave behind an Africa or African continent that is war-torn, run by unruly leadership, deeply entrenched in poverty with high levels of corruption. So avoiding this, we are coming with several initiatives to make Africa a better place for everyone. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I'm aware that we'll be spending the next 2 days engaging with some of the experts on the subject of democratic governance, led by the co-host, the Institute of Security Studies, the Center for Strategic Litigation, MS Training Center for Development Cooperation, Akina Mama wa Africa, including myself, International Commission for Jurists, Afrobarometer, the Africa Leadership Center, and the Mo Ibrahim Foundation. Demo Ibrahim, are they here? Okay. I applaud the collaborative efforts, and it is for this reason that I wish to commend you for taking this initiative, and so wish to pledge my own and my government support to this important cause. Excellencies, we in Tanzania bear witness to the value of democratic rule, which is achieved through strong constitutional foundations and an active political culture. We are here to learn from our sisters and brothers from other African countries. And I'm told that among other issues to be discussed here, we'll focus on the following topics. 1, ways to elevate the role of citizen in addressing conflicts. 2, proactive and preventive action and early warning signs. 3, renewed commitment to good governance, human rights and democracy. 4, presence of strong and independent monitoring and verification of the continent's democracy. And 5, ways to strengthen continental and sub-regional bodies in dealing with challenges of democracy. So I'm sure the gurus on these topics are here with us, and fellow Tanzanians are ready to learn from you. Excellencies and distinguished guests, once again, let me applaud the conveners of this Elders Retreat on the state of democracy in Africa for putting together excellent programs which undoubtedly will yield the anticipated results. In Swahili, there's a saying that goes by, palipo wazee hapaharibiki neno, literally meaning, where there are elders, nothing goes wrong. So this retreat should therefore serve as a platform to deliberate on unfavorable state of affairs and propose practical ways of improving the situation, especially in our continent, Africa. Excellencies, in my concluding remarks, it is my sincere hope that in addition to the retreat, you will have an opportunity to visit the beautiful attractions present here in Arusha. I would have loved to remain behind and join you for the entire 2 days of the retreat, but owing to the other equal exigencies of office, I'll not be able to do so. So while wishing you successful deliberation, I also have the honor to declare that the Elders Retreat on State of Democracy in Africa is now officially opened. Thank you. And having said that, my government is eagerly, please be seated. My government is eagerly waiting to receive the plan of action to pick some of those issues which we can implement. I thank you for your kind attention. Thank you very much. Thank you so much.
Madam President, thank you very much for those. For those of us who are lucky enough to be citizens of this country, we know how lucky we are to have Mama SAMIA as our leader. But I want you to know that you are also a leader that inspires people across this continent. I'll just tell you one story. I was in Kenya a few months ago, and I meet with students, and I was meeting with a group of female students, and we asked them, what do you aspire to be? And several of them said, I want to be the president. And I said, you want to be the president? Why? And one of them said, wait. And she went in her bag and took out a photograph of President SAMIA and said, you see, I too can be a leader. So you are inspiring people, especially young girls, to imagine that they too can be the president. Right now, we are going to do a very important African tradition, which is to take photographs. And I ask you all to remain seated until we are completed with this activity. It won't take much time. And please just listen to the order that we do this. The first set of photographs that we want to have is with this high table over here, meza kuu. So if we can just arrange to have these, the meza kuu, and if we can make space for the others to leave just for the high table here to take the photographs, please. And I think the camera people will know if they can organize themselves. All right. If you just so this is the first one. So, all right. Are the photographers ready? And you can maybe I can ask the two of you to just come to the sides, to either side, please. One to this side. These are the organizers. One on each side, please. All right. Thank you very much. Now, I would like to invite the second group, and please, you enter on this side. So you come up these stairs in front of me. You enter and you stand behind the group. And then when you leave, you will leave on that side. So the next group is that the board and the staff of the three organizing institutions, the Center for Strategic Litigation, ISS, and TCDC. Please enter up here and stand behind our group. While these are coming, the other members of the retreat, if you are a participant of the retreat, please move to the back. If you are a participant of the retreat, please make yourselves ready by coming on this side and wait, okay? If you can move to this end, please. Okay, now those who are standing, if you can exit on that side. And now if you are a participant, invited participant to the retreat, please enter and go to the far end. Move towards the hour, yes. Thank you very much. Now you may exit and take your seats. And one nice photograph with tunaomba washauri wa rais, wa Mheshimiwa Rais, the advisors of the president, if may come up to the stage, please. Thank you very much. Please remain seated. Okay. At this stage, I would invite the President of the United Republic of Tanzania to take her leave. Please remain seated while she does so.